to order. It's June 9th. And Mr. Bear, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I will. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, let's have roll call.
For Camarillo Airport Authority, Supervisor Long.
Here.
Supervisor Ramirez.
I'm here.
Mayor Moshe.
Present.
Chair Santangelo.
Here.
And Vice Chair Bear.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
And for Oxnard?
For Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long.
Here.
Supervisor Ramirez.
Here.
Councilmember Perello.
Here.
Chair Lopez.
Here.
Vice Chair Fussell.
Here.
Oxnard has a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda review. Are there any changes to the agenda?
This is Director Freitas. So we have no changes to the agenda. I do want to point out that we have changes in our staff supporting this meeting. Leah and Sean, our normal team is out today. So we've got Leah and Sean running it for us. Thank you.
Well, good. Well, welcome aboard. Okay, let's move on to the approval of minutes. We'll start with Camarillo. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve them?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
I did not hear who the motion was made by.
Moshe.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and have a vote. I'm sorry, roll call vote.
Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez.
Yes.
Mayor Moshe.
Yes.
Chair Santangelo.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
Okay, Chair Lopez, are you there? I can't.
Yes, I am here. Sorry, I'm having some Wi-Fi
There you
issues,
are.
so I will be on camera shortly. But for the Oxnard Authority, are there any changes or comments on the minutes for our May 12th meeting? Otherwise, I welcome a motion.
A motion to approve, Long. Second.
Second, Perello.
Oh, well. Take it away.
Thank you. So I heard a motion by Supervisor Long, and I heard Councilmember Perello with the second. Can we take a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilmember Perello.
Yes.
Chair Lopez.
Yes.
Vice Chair Fussell.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So now it's time for public comments. And if you have comments now, the instructions are up on the screen.
Chair Santangelo, may I make an announcement to the public?
Please do.
If you would like to be added to the public comment queue, please be connected via Zoom. If not already connected and wish to make a public comment, you can find the Zoom link on the last page of the meeting agenda, which can be found at vcairports.org/meeting-calendar. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 5, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star, then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. And we do have a member of the public that would like to speak, so we'll move them to panelist.
Okay. I believe that's Joni Conterno.
That's correct.
Okay, Joni, it looks like you've been made a panelist.
Joni, you can unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. At the May 12th meeting of this group, both Walter Hagedorn and Rita Wingarten presented compelling facts verifying the clear and present danger of lead exposure we citizens of Oxnard are being exposed to by touch and go flights that are allowed to fly over occupied areas. Vice Chair Scott Baer came on screen to address the lead issue with this quote, "The problem is solved. The FAA has approved moving to unleaded fuel. It's just a matter of time." Thank you, Scott, for confirming that leaded fuel is a problem, but just a matter of time is not a solution. The risk to human health and well-being is happening right now with touch and go flights over occupied areas. Just a matter of time could be years away, and how many lives will have been affected by then? If the solution is switching to unleaded fuel, then there should be a moratorium on all touch and go flights currently using leaded fuel. For now, no touch and go should be allowed to fly over occupied areas. The discussion of the Teal Club development on May 12th also illustrates the lack of concern for the safety and well-being of communities surrounding the airport. The senior planner spoke of an agreement where all touch and go flights would turn left and not right to avoid the Teal Club or other developments in the works. People are people no matter what side of the airport they live on or when they arrived in this community. Our city officials need to make inclusive decisions for all their citizens, not a select group. Touch and go flights should not fly over any occupied areas. The Teal Club presentation also brought up airport waivers that are signed by any new occupants in advance of taking ownership to recognize airport impact. As currently operated, the Oxnard Airport is not like most airports, with arrivals and departures of flights that immediately leave the area. The negative exposure from most airports is a far cry from the assault allowed by unregulated touch and go flights that don't go anywhere except in circles over Oxnard homes and schools. Unlike most airports, touch and go flights make up over 60% of Oxnard air traffic, and that is what needs to be recognized and disclosed. Any waiver should reflect what the actual impact will be on potential new residents. Anything else would be misleading and dishonest. Thank you for taking into consideration the risk that Oxnard communities, existing and future, are exposed to by unregulated touch and go training flights, and for making the changes to better the safety and well-being for the people of Oxnard. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. It looks like that's all. Is that all that you're seeing?
Yes, Chair, there are no further members of the public wishing to speak, but I do have a written comment.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and read that now. The written comment is from Rita Wingarten, and it reads, "I understand the planes used for touch and go are using leaded fuel. I'm very concerned at this point. Excessive noise is one thing, but why are we allowing planes that use leaded fuel to fly over our neighborhoods and schools? Lead is being spewed on all over us. There are thousands of homes and several schools that are severely affected. We have planes flying over us at low altitude every few minutes for hours. Given the health and safety issue affecting us, especially children, I feel the authorities should follow Santa Clara County's lead study and mandate that starting next week, only unleaded fuel be sold at Camarillo and Oxnard airports. I'm certain everyone here remembers the Flint, Michigan lead issue. Better yet, let's have a moratorium on touch and go training until we can be sure the children and residents are safe. According to the CDC, there are no safe levels of lead. Thank you." And that concludes the written comments for this item.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no more comments, we're going to move ahead to new business. And the first item is Oxnard. So I'll pass this on to Chair Lopez.
Thank you, Chair Santangelo. So the next item we have is a presentation on the Campus Park project. Mr. Freitas, if there's any introduction or if city staff are ready to begin the presentation, I will hand it off to you.
Chair, this is Director Freitas. I will introduce with the city of Oxnard, who will do all the introductions with their team, Nicholas Boas from the city of Oxnard to introduce this item and the presentation team. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good evening, authority members. My name is Nicholas Bose. I am a supervising civil engineer here for the city of Oxnard in the Public Works Department, and also have the honor of being the project manager for this Campus Park project. I'll turn it over to our design consultant to run through their presentation. But some of you might be familiar with this project as it has come before this board before as a different concept. And we'll go into some of the background of why we're here now, kind of the journey to get here and what we're hoping for out of tonight. So I will turn it over. MIG is our design consultants who will be presenting tonight to you all. Also on this call, I believe we have City of Oxnard planning staff. We have extension of planning staff, which is CSG, sorry. CSG is helping our planning department here at the City of Oxnard, as well as supporting the project management of this is M6. So we have probably a large size bus full of consultants on this project. Hopefully any questions you have might be able to be answered tonight. So without further ado, I think Jose, I'll turn it over to you from MIG to run through the presentation and do any introductions that you wish.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Just want to thank everybody for having us here today. My name is Jose Leal, and I'm the landscape architect and the project manager for the design team of MIG. I am joined today by other members of the MIG team and team itself. We have Evan Mather, who's principal landscape architect, and we have Wendy Chand, who's our senior landscape architect of MIG. And we also have Jose Asensio, who's project civil engineer. Next slide. So through this presentation, we're going to provide some brief background on the project. As Nick said, going to talk briefly on the previous 2012 master plan that was developed. We're also going to kind of dive into our recent work, quick summary of the community engagement process, and finally just review the emerging concepts. Next. So in 1995, the city acquired the site that was once the home of the Oxnard High School. I think the fundamental goal of the city was to reorient the site and bring energy to the neighborhoods and other key civic amenities that are adjacent and near the park. So to help with this, the city applied and received a Prop 68 grant to help with the first phase implementation and of the park's activation. So the current project objectives are really looking at activating the park through this first funded phase. We really want the park to serve as an expression of the natural, cultural, and historical landscape of Oxnard. We're really looking to reconnect the site to the community. Also, we're looking at maximizing the initial investment that Prop 68 grant provides through consolidation of program elements. And finally, we're looking at delivering the first phase of what we're considering a signature park by March of 2024, which is required in order to meet the grant requirements. So as you can see in this image here, the park is surrounded by many great assets of the community. This includes Oxnard Adult School, various churches, Fire Station number 1, and of course, various established neighborhoods. There's also a few existing uses at or adjacent to the park site. This includes the Oxnard Union High School District Maintenance Yard and offices, the Powell Youth Center, existing parking lot and basketball courts, an existing dog park, and currently the city is completing an aquifer storage and recovery well project that's going to be located near the southern end of the site. So our project began in the fall of 2021, and we anticipate going through 2024, once again, at which point phase 1 is planned to be completed and open to the community. Now, project efforts to date include preliminary investigations. We've gone through a round of conceptual designs that were heavily weighted and vetted through the community engagement process. And we also plan on starting construction documentation in early summer of this year. So as all of you are aware of, the majority of the campus park site lies within the runway protection zone of the Oxnard Airport, which is really the primary reason why we're here today to present our project to you. But before we jump into the current design, I do wish to share the previous master plan that the city prepared in 2012. Now, this park was a little bit different than what you're going to see. The previous vision of the park was really a sports complex with a variety of recreational facilities. This master plan included soccer field with baseball field overlays. It had a synthetic track and field area with spectator seating. We had a skate park, children playgrounds, basketball courts, and a dog park. And it also included covered courtyard at the existing gymnasium building, which is now the PAL Center, a restroom and concession facilities, park maintenance yard and storage building, various parking lots, and it kind of gave birth to the PAL program, which is once again housed at the existing gymnasium or the PAL Center. Now, the MIG team was not involved in the previous master plan, but we have come to understand that it never really moved forward towards implementation. So in June and July of 2019, the city held a series of bilingual community workshops to gain input on the current community vision for the park. And through these workshops, the community voiced that they wanted a park that was unique to Oxnard and truly represented the Oxnard character. People were really looking at a signature park and identified various elements that they wished to see at the park. They were really looking at the park to help celebrate the culture and art of Oxnard, but also provide more passive areas for open space and habitat. So in February of 2020, the city was awarded an $8.5 million Prop 68 park grant that was to both be used for construction of the park. So as part of this grant requirement, various elements have to be constructed as part of the phase 1 project. These elements include a walking path that really help connect this to the surrounding neighborhoods, a California native meadow, helping showcase Oxnard's local ecology and serve for an area that could be used for more passive recreation. The seasonal dry creek that is being used for stormwater benefits. A nature-themed inclusive playground that would provide play for all ages and abilities. Landscaping, which would be comprised primarily of community gardens. A pavilion structure, which is really meant to be an intimate space that can serve as a focal point for both cultural and educational related informal gatherings. A Pelota Mixteca court, which is also going to be used as a multi-use space. Pelota Mixteca court is really a long rectangular court or space where a handball game indigenous to Oaxaca, Mexico is played. And through the use and design of the space, we're also looking for it to be used for classes or small community activities or events. The park will include a skate park, a bicycle pump track. We're looking at refurbishing the existing courts and parking lots. And we're also looking at incorporating some public art elements into it. Now, since 2019, the city has been engaging the community on where we consider this current project. And since the summer of 2021, our team has engaged the community with various activities you see listed here. Our primary goal is that of gathering feedback and gain an understanding of the elements of the design that are needed to be considered to comply kind of with the community vision. So we've had a series of community workshops. We've had visioning sessions with specific user groups. We've had community pop-up events, online workshop. We have an advisory panel that has guided us. We've done online surveys. We've presented to a commission. And through the community engagement process, we have really been able to gather numerous comments from the community, future park users, and the city and various city departments. We even did have the opportunity to meet with Dave Naffey to present a previous version of the master plan you'll see today and obtain some of his initial thoughts. So with all this being said, all these activities have really resulted in setting the stage of what the emergent themes are. And those 5 emergent themes that have come out through the community engagement process have been related to safety and access, a balance between natural areas and activity areas, flexible spaces that the community can use for various reasons, and overall trying to develop a park that really represents the Oxnard community and culture. So with this, I'll pass it on to Evan and Wendy of my team here to go over the current master plan with you.
So again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to join you this evening to present the Campus Park project. Over the last several months, the team has worked diligently to take in all the feedback that the community and others have provided. The plan that we're sharing with you this evening reflects the community vision and the design team's technical knowledge and expertise. We call this the emerging concept. It includes all of the elements as required by the grant. Additionally, as per our engagement opportunities with the community, we have identified additional future elements as part of the overall master plan. So 1, we have a series of walking paths that bring visitors throughout the different experiences of Campus Park. 2 is the alluvial wash, which is the seasonal dry creek that goes through the breadth of Campus Park. 3 is the recreation core that contains new basketball courts, a skate park, and bicycle pump track. 4 is the multi-purpose lawn for sports activities. 5 is the inclusive playground for children of all ages and abilities. 6 is the pavilion for community gatherings and small performances. 7 is the Pelota Mixteca court. That's the Oaxacan ball game that Jose mentioned. 8 is a series of informal passive meadows for picnicking and exploring nature, some with subtle topography. 9 is a community garden and fruit orchard. 10, we've located a series of 3 restroom buildings, modular restroom buildings. 11 is the relocated dog park. We call 12 the airplane viewing mound. 13 is a cultural garden. 14 is we have an entry garden at the main entry at 5th and H Street. 15 is a series of community gateways. And then 16, all along the perimeter of Campus Park, we have new landscaping. So I'm going to walk you through these elements in a little bit more detail to explain how we located them. So this is the inclusive playground with the Pelota Mixteca. These are located closer to the existing parking and a new restroom. This is a key consideration for families with children. We call this the children's core. It's located in the center of the park, away from the perimeter streets. The playground includes swings, net climber, hillside slide, a play forest, an outdoor classroom, and picnic areas, including a meadow berm to the north. For surfacing, we're planning to use a combination of resilient surfacing and 5R mulch. This will be contingent on the available funding. The alluvial wash borders the playground and provides a place for nature play and exploration. This synergy will create educational opportunities and environmental awareness, critical to inspiring interactions between children and nature. We located the Pelota Mixteca outside of the runway protection zone and along H Street. The court is surrounded by 25-foot tall decorative fencing and a landscape buffer to prevent flying balls from hitting cars or nearby pedestrians. This location is logical given the airport's concern about tall elements such as the fencing within the protection zone. Next is this is the entry garden and the pavilion. As I mentioned, the main entrance to the park is located at the southeast corner at 5th and H, where users will enter through a beautiful entry garden. Now, in our research and talking with the airport, we know that traditional amphitheaters are not allowed. So we've created as a pavilion that can serve these functions. Likewise, the pavilion has been located at the southern area of the park outside of the runway protection zone. The pavilion is actually dual purpose. Intimate events can be held within the structure itself with benches and a small stage. The stage also opens up to the lawn on the north side for smaller gatherings or other gatherings. The pavilion is oriented north-south to address concerns about glare on performers or the audience. It's also situated within 2 berms to mitigate noise concerns. The design of these berms will be carefully considered in collaboration with the Oxnard Police Department to address issues of visibility. A restroom and reconfigured parking lot are located nearby on the south. Next is the recreation core. This contains the renovated basketball courts, the skate park, and the bicycle pump track. These have been located to not only take advantage of adjacency to the Powell Teen Center, as well as to the existing sport court, but also situated away from the quieter areas of Campus Park. A restroom, picnic area, and multi-purpose lawn are adjacent. A viewing berm wraps around the north and west sides of the skate park and pump track to not only provide a buffer from the neighboring uses, but also provide a fun area to gather and watch the happenings. Next is to serve as a buffer to the west. The master plan includes an airport viewing mound as an exciting place where kids and adults can go and gain a higher vantage to watch planes land. On the east side, across from the headwaters of the alluvial wash, we've located a cultural garden and cherry orchard across from the Buddhist temple. We've also situated a new convenience parking lot and restroom on this north edge. This is the dog park. We've actually relocated the existing dog park to this tucked away space between the ASR well and the future housing development. This site was chosen to help activate this remote area of the park and serve as an amenity for future housing residents. Its adjacency to 5th Street will mitigate concerns about dog park noise. By tucking it over here and activating the space of Campus Park, it provides for more contiguous, passive garden experience throughout the rest of the park. The dog park will have areas for small dogs and large dogs and is secured with a sally port entrance. Amenities could include shade canopies, doggy drinking fountains, and seating for users. The surfacing is proposed to be a combination of mulch and lawn for easy maintenance, but this could be explored as the design evolves. The community garden and fruit orchard have been located at the south end of the park to provide the best solar exposure and connection to the adjacent neighborhoods. This element contains not only fenced garden plots and a fruit orchard, but also storage sheds, composting facilities, and an outdoor classroom. This is a place for young and old to learn sustainable food production, a workshop space where presentations and lectures could occur. Next, I'm going to share with you a series of illustrative renderings to help you better visualize some of the main elements of the Campus Park concept. This is the entrance at 2nd and H Street. Here you can see the beginning of the outer loop walking path and also one of the community gateway elements, which could be a public art element. Public art could be expressed in many different ways through these gateways, but also the fencing, the pavilion structure. It all needs to be finalized, but this is what we're exploring. We're not quite there yet. But this will be part of an ongoing conversation with the city as the project evolves and more phases come online. In this case, the gateway elements are inspired by Chumash mythology, specifically the upper, middle, and lower worlds of the Chumash universe. But this is just one example. Campus Park will be an expression of many cultures represented of Oxnard, from the Oaxacan fence patterns to the Japanese garden. This is one of the walking paths you'll see solar powered lighting, seating, and canopy shade trees with native landscaping. The pathways are all decomposed granite. This is the pathway along the alluvial wash. You can see the interpretive educational signage. Here, this is the inclusive playground with the net climber, the swings, and the hillside slide. Note that all of the various natural elements, including the repurposed logs for seating. This is a view of the Plota Mixteca court. You can see it's surrounded by that decorative fencing, in this case, inspired by traditional Oaxacan basket patterns. Here we see the pavilion and the multi-purpose lawn space. Here we see the community gathering in anticipation of a live performance. This is an image of the recreation core, the entrance between the skate park and the basketball courts. And this is an illustration of users tending to their garden plots in the community garden. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Wendy, who's going to share some specific materials we're planning for Campus Park.
Thank you, Evan. Good evening. The next couple of slides are images of various types of materials and site furnishings that will be used at the park. The skate park and pump track and the key accessible paths are natural grade concrete. As you saw on the visualizations, the pedestrian pathway systems are stabilized decomposed granite for a more natural material. We're also proposing solar power pedestrian lights along the major pedestrian paths and at the skate park and pump track. These pole lights are 14-foot high max with the shield and dark sky compliant. Also, outdoor fitness equipment are located along the inner walking loops. There's our various seating opportunities, such as steel park benches, recycled wood picnic tables. We're also integrating salvaged log benches and stumps for natural seating opportunities throughout the park. And you'll see on the lower left corner is the restroom is the city standard Exilute self-cleaning restroom with 2 gender-neutral stalls. The building is about 136 square feet and 9.5 feet tall. These are some images of the play equipment. They'll be composed of net climbers, hillside embankment slides, inclusive motion spinners, a variety of swings for all ages and abilities, and small sensory play elements. The surfacing of the playground will be a combination of poured-in-place resilient surfacing and engineered wood fiber. Natural materials such as logs and tree stumps, plant materials, and boulders are also integrated into the playground design. The next set of slides are the proposed plant material at the various spaces within the park. The proposed plant palette is drought tolerant, climate appropriate, and low maintenance. The proposed trees are smaller in scale with the 30-foot high max mature height due to visibility concerns by the airport. Along the walking paths is a combination of native and adaptive ornamental plants such as kangaroo paws, sages, and perennial grasses like deergrass. The plants within the alluvial wash and seasonal dry creek are part of the California native riparian plant community with various types of juncus rushes, irises, willows, perennial grasses, and sycamores. In the meadow areas will be a combination of native wildflowers and perennial grasses that are no-mow, drought tolerant, low maintenance, and can take foot traffic and passive recreation. At the community orchard will be a combination of cherry trees and pomegranates and loquats that do well in the Oxnard climate. The premier planting composed of the planting along the edges, streetscapes, and parking lots to provide shade, character, and to define community spaces. The understory will be native hardy perennial plants like hellthorn buckwheat, coyote brush, lilacs, and deergrass. And with that, I want to just thank you all for your time, and I'll open up to any questions or comments.
Thank you for the presentation. I see the first hand up from Supervisor Ramirez.
Thank you very much. And I am so delighted to see this. I have a couple of comments and questions. When I was on Oxnard City Council, I remember that first master plan coming, which was greeted with lots of boos and jeers because it appeared that the local community had not really been adequately consulted. I'm particularly talking about the historic district, the folks right along H Street. It just wasn't going to fly. And so this seems quite beautiful. And I hope that there's been that adequate engagement with the community. I guess we'll hear from maybe a couple of community members. I wanted to say I really like the idea of the inclusive playground. I saw that the city of Ventura just received an award for the inclusive playground at Arroyo Verde Park. That's wonderful. Also, I just want to note that on your logo that you showed, it said Campus Park, City of Oxnard. I recognize that you have on there iconic designs of Monte Alban, which is in Oaxaca. I hope that, well, you did that on purpose, right? Yes, yeah, you probably did. So I think that's quite, if that ultimately becomes the standard out there and people see it, I think it'll be very significant to a lot of our Oaxaqueño families who are here. They'll recognize that. I see that one of the trees is Desert Museum. I have one in my yard. It does beautifully in Oxnard. It's designed for the coastal communities, whereas the regular Palo Verde is really for very dry desert. So good choices. I think it's great. I do want to ask about funding. I see that you got money for design, but what is the status of funding for the whole deal?
I can speak to that. We actually, the $8.5 million grant includes design and construction for this phase 1 activation. So we hope to get some future funding to kind of build out that master plan as we go forward. But yeah, it's all inclusive for this phase.
Thank you. A final question is, I know there was some consternation about the ASR wells that are on the property. Can you speak to that as well? How they will blend in or not interfere with? I mean, we really need them, but what's the status of that?
Yeah, I could speak to that as well. We do have the one ASR well that is currently under construction, and that is basically just the test well, if you will. So once we get that up and running, we'll be able to report back to the state and see what that program can look like through many more studies. But I can speak preliminarily. It looks like that one well will probably be the only one that's feasible for this campus park site. So it doesn't look likely that there will be new wells added in the future.
Thank you. And just finally, I want to let everybody know this is Canada Dry in case you think it's a Heineken. It's not. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Ramirez. Supervisor Long.
Okay, Supervisor Ramirez, I never thought that, so just let you know. I did have a couple questions on the plan. Could you put the slide back up, which is the total design? Okay, thank you. And so the airport is on which side of this design area?
On the K Street side?
Okay. Just trying to make sure that there's adequate parking, I think is very crucial, because many people will come to this park that are not living close or have little ones, so they'll throw them in the car to get there. And the other question I had is in regards to, is there a walking path completely around this property? Or?
Yes, there will be. There's an existing sidewalk that loops the whole park, and we're going to be augmenting.
Okay. Okay, so it will be ADA specific and safe for people to ride their bike or scooter or a stroller or any of that nature.
Correct.
Okay, and then where is the observation? I apologize. You know the project much better than I do. I was just wondering, based on where the airport is, the viewing.
It's that keynote number 12 up the northern side of the park.
Okay, all right. I really think that this design is beautiful. It's wonderful, very thoughtful for the community and neighborhood. I would just ask that whatever we're using as supplies to build, that it is something that you won't be repairing in 5-10 years. Because as we know, funding is very crucial. We don't get it very often, but I wouldn't like anything vandalized, like the wood stumps, or if they're using their skateboards to skim across the edge and it gets all torn up. This is a beautiful design. I just want to make sure that we use some common sense when parents aren't watching their kids, or teenagers come through, that we make sure that this will last a longer time as possible. So I love seeing all the different materials, but if we could make sure the consideration is that it's going to last more than 5 years, in which we have to replace everything again. We have several parks in which material choices weren't the best. They're more look and feel, and then had to be replaced really quickly. And so if I could just ask for that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Long. I'll just ask if there's any other committee members who have a question before we open it up for public comment. Councilmember Perrello.
Thank you. I'd like to to some of the slides, but we could leave it here. I see the dotted, and I would really appreciate that if we have any more in the future consultants, whoever the presidents of these boards are, that whenever a consultant comes, they use a PowerPoint. So about. I do appreciate Ms. Supervisor Long asking the question. I can see the numbers 12, but a PowerPoint attention. People may not be able to see the numbers without their glasses, such as myself. There was mention of, on this particular side, the question that Supervisor Long asked, and thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. I had my hand up at the very beginning, but I wanted to ask it before we got going, but I'll hold those. Are we going to allow electric bicycles and electric scooters in here? And the reason I ask, the speeds at which they can cruise through our community, if we're going to put them on the same limited path size with children and adults, is there a plan for that? How does the consultant see that, or the city staff? And I'm hoping, as I've asked in the past, that on an item like this, we have a city legal staff here and a county legal staff. That's what I was going to ask at the beginning. But how's the electric scooters and electric bicycles going to be handled here? That's my question.
I could speak to that, Councilmember Perrello. I think that would really be an enforcement issue with our police department. Obviously, we can't really prevent them from coming out here, but we will work with our enforcement to make sure that that is properly cited accordingly. But it has to be, because it has to be publicly accessed. We can't really prevent anyone from entering that would have that, but again, it would be an enforcement issue.
Okay, thank you. Before we leave the slide, on the lower left corner, we have a diagonal dotted line that drops from the airport inference, whatever you're calling it, and it goes to almost the corner of 8th Street and 5th, the dotted black line. Do you see that?
Yes.
That's a question.
Yes, I do see it.
You do, okay. And then directly above it, we have a horizontal black line. And so the line that is missing is the other proportion, is the other diagonal line above that. So with that in mind, that's why I'd like to go to slide 17, please. Slide 17. Okay, because that's where I was able to get a picture, grab a snatch of this. Okay, now progressively go forward. Continue. Bingo. Okay, so the dotted black line that I referred to from that previous slide would now be the dotted yellow, the dotted red line in the lower part of this diagram. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so the dotted upper line towards the top is the proportionately equal this area that's supposed to be a very big concern. Is that correct?
Correct. The runway protection zone.
Okay, the reason I bring this up, we have 2nd Street, which we can see. I hope everybody can see that. We don't show it, but we show where the bus barns were underneath the green. I think if we progress to the next sign, we might see it. And there's a baseball field there. Do we know the date when the plane crashed into that baseball field in Campus Park?
I do not.
Okay, are you aware that a plane crashed into the baseball field at Campus Park?
I believe so.
Okay, because I just bringing this up for the members of this board. I've asked in the past on the project at Fifth Street, and I've asked in the past with coming up with Teal Club Road. Whenever we're going to have something close to the airport, I think it's a disservice to the public, whichever way this project goes, to not show where there have been incidents. And I do know, because I was able to meet the pilot, who luckily survived, got caught in the backstop before he crashed into the bus barns, which are covered up in the green. So if we proceed to the next couple of slides, please. I'm trying to. Okay, it would be, okay, stop there. Oh no, I'm sorry, continue. Where you have your airport observation. And I just want to comment, that slide of the red shade, that's a very impressive. I hope that we can put that more in the county and the city of Oxnard. Extremely impressive the way that slide. Okay, right there. Okay, we have your area where you have the airport observation. Doesn't have the number on it right now, but that's where we show the Oxnard Union High School District facilities. Right where those trees are, just to the east of those things, closest to seconds. The reason I bring that up, I do not want to approve this project or deny this project without that going on the public record. This Councilman Bert Perrella wants that on the public record because there was concern for shutting the school down on this matter because of the airplanes. And to gloss over that, I think my community is given a disservice if that is not on the table. Now, getting to another item. In the staff report, it indicates that there is a concern with the airport with respect to the amphitheater because the potential of the people, the way this is drawn, the picture on this slide, the one on the right, where that circular thing, the brown circular thing, which is some kind of an amphitheater, that the people will be sitting on the grass, and it states in the staff report, there is a concern with the airport on that, but it has been, I'm assuming the way the wording is, and it's tricky, and again, I'm not an attorney, and I hope we have one here that can answer the question. Everybody's okay with the people sitting on that grass? That's my question, based on the staff report's wording.
Thank you, Mr. Perrello. And so going back to the report attached to this item in our agenda, there are conditions that were listed in terms of this item even being considered to meet the compatible or to be found compatible with the land use. So if we could have either Mr. Freitas or someone else from the airport authority who can go over what those conditions are, because I believe the amphitheater was one of them, that it would not be allowed to have an amphitheater, and this additional, or this design is what I understand meets the conditions.
Well, my understanding, Chair Lopez, is the amphitheater, because it's outside of that black line, below the black line, we're okay with that, provided the height is low enough. Where the problem is the green area where all the public would be sitting to watch the action in the amphitheater. So we get kind of like 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. The amphitheater is going to be able to skin by because it's below the black line. But the issue that may jeopardize the whole project is the people sitting on the grass. I don't know if we have any legal counsel that can tell us, is this going to fly or is it not going to fly? And to avoid putting staff in a position of answering something that is going to take an eternity to answer, it seems, I hope we're prepared for this. And if there's no one here to answer, I can, not happy about it, but the question's been asked.
Chair Lopez, this is Keith from the airport. I will leave that to respond to the requirements to the city staff of Oxnard and or their team.
Yeah, if I may just if I may address that, Councilmember Perello, the pavilion structure that we have, it may be a little misleading in this rendering. We're not really viewing this as a large gathering pavilion space. It's almost more of a lattice type shade structure with seating beneath it. So the actual formal seating to invite members of the community would actually be defined within the footprint of the pavilion as it's shown now. I think the rendering showing the people on the lawn as a community space gathering, we don't have anything programmed in that would invite that sort of gathering. I think we're just kind of illustrating that people are welcome to do that really anywhere in the park. They could gather at any of the meadows or green spaces. Just so happened that that rendering showed it in front of this pavilion structure. But the structure itself and the formal seating provided would be within that structure footprint outside of the runway protection zone. I don't know if that helps clarify.
Yes, it does, because I took the opinion from seeing the rendering that that's where the audience was sitting. Thank you very much for clarifying it. That's a strong point that you clarified. Thank you. And my last point is, when you have the rendering of the trees, can you go to that slide? I don't have that number because it appears that we have cherry trees there. And my understanding with cherry trees, they need a period of time, what is called, has somebody double checked that the weather in Oxnard is going to provide a period of hardening, which usually requires below 32 degrees for a number of days? Right there. Bottom row, second from the left, second from the right. Are those cherries?
No.
And so I'm not saying as the expert, but I do know a little bit about this stuff. And so that's why I'm asking the question, put it out there. I'm sure we got staff that can address it. Chair Lopez.
I can answer that question.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, take it away.
The plant palette is evolving. This is a concept. We'll continue to do research on the appropriate fruit trees for the orchard relative to the Oxnard environment. We do give careful consideration to the marine influence of the plant material. So we'll continue to do research on that. And if it's not the appropriate cultivar or type of cherry tree, we won't advance it to the design.
And the only reason I bring that to your attention, Oxnard is well known for citrus and avocados. And if there are many days below 32 degrees, there wouldn't be raising lemons here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perello. Supervisor Long?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Perello for answering those questions, asking those questions. I agree with the plant choice. It seems like this list might be missing what is grown in Oxnard and what is native. So if you could relook at that. And then also where the people are sitting by the pavilion, it shows as a hill. Is that a hill or is that flat?
I can answer that. It's a low sloped lawn. It's not envisioned to be a hill. You might consider it a berm. But okay, we also want to be very careful that we don't create any hiding places, that everything is surveyable from around.
Well, the Santa Barbara Zoo has a hill, and so I'm hoping that it's not as high as that one by the playground area. And what people do is actually take torn cardboard and slide down the hill all the time. And so it's fun, but it also creates a lot of trash. And so unless we have staff that's maintaining this park all the time, I do have concern of that. And then also with the sitting. But again, I just want to say thank you to Bert for asking those questions. It's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Long. Supervisor Ramirez?
One last picky detail, and I know that the things will change and be appropriate. Yes, Oxnard has a coastal climate, and you can't always plant what you might plant elsewhere, but I have an apple tree, for example, right back here. You're not supposed to grow apples in Oxnard, but it does very well. It's the right kind. I just looked up, and again, forgive me for being a nerd about this, the Royal Lee cherry tree, according to this site, is a low chill, and it does very well in coastal areas if we're going to have that kind of tree. Anyway, thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you,
Thank you for the
Supervisor.
clarification. May I ask you another question, Chair?
Yes, I
Lopez?
see your hand. Go ahead.
Okay, with respect to the amphitheater, if it's not a hill and it's a low sloping area, is the amphitheater below ground level that potentially could be an attractant to water standing whenever it does rain around here again, or will there be a drainage system due to the high water table in Oxnard? Will there be a drainage system to remove the water from ponding around the amphitheater? The reason I ask that, there's a park in College Park that has an area that is dry nearly most of the time, but when it rains extensively, we have a lake and actually have no fishing signs at that park. I don't want our amphitheater to become something like that. Do we have any information about the drainage system for that?
We're working on with our civil engineer to ensure that we'll be able to achieve positive drainage around all these structures and that we don't create areas of ponding as you suggested.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your answer.
Thank you, Mr. Perello. And either Mr. Boas or Mr. Leal, if you can walk us through what the process has been in terms of getting this project through. Today, we're hearing it here in the Airport Authority Committee. And what is the next steps, or what happens after today, just so that we understand, if there are any potential changes, given, what you've been hearing today and any other feedback from the community. So if you could just share what that process is with us, please.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Councilmember Lopez. So we have already taken this project to the Oxnard Parks and Rec Commission. I believe that was 2 months ago. We wanted to get their buy-off on it before we continued down at a conceptual phase. This was, as well, we've taken it to the Design Advisory Committee too with the City of Oxnard at 2 phases. So that's an opportunity for this project to receive comments from all city departments that would be involved with ultimately approving and entitling this project. We are here tonight hoping to get the buy-off from this board that this complies with the Land Use Commission planning zone. Hopefully, if we clear that hurdle, that will kind of free us up to enter into more of a detailed design. And then we will be taking this concept as kind of a similar presentation tonight to the Oxnard City Council. I believe that will be July 19th is what we have that scheduled for. So that'll be coming to you guys in July. And then following City Council, because this is a capital improvement project, if once we get concurrence of council on the concept and any of these other pending issues, then we can actually move forward into final design. We can bid this for construction, and then it'll go back to council for award of construction contract. So that's kind of the life path of this project. I will emphasize too that because this is grant funded, we are working expeditiously with MIG and our consultants to get this through. We do not have a lot of time at any of these steps. So MIG has worked really hard throughout the whole process to kind of get this through quickly. That's why we have a bit of a condensed schedule with coming to the Airport Authority and then to City Council about a month away. So we're trying to move as quickly as possible here while taking into account all the comments and making sure that this is a viable project that really answers all the concerns.
Thank you. That's great to know the process. Councilmember Perello.
Yes, I appreciate the staff's work here. I appreciate the work. This looks like a good project, but to let everybody be on the same page, what date do we have to use the funding by so that we don't lose it? Can you share that with us?
I will address that, and really we don't want to lose $8.5 million, so that's really not an option. But this park has to be constructed and open by March of 2024.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. So at this point, we will go ahead and open for public comment if there are any. And Leah, I don't. Do you want to read a statement, or can we go ahead?
Yes, I'll go ahead and read the statement. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item 6A, please press the raise hand button now. Or if you're calling in today, press star, then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. It does look like we do have 2 members of the public that would like to speak, so we're going to promote them to panelists. Angela White. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, Leah. Thank you.
Angela Whitecomb, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Angela Whitecomb. I am the chair for the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission. I am also a member of the Friends of Campus Park, and I'm so excited to see this project getting ready to go through to the City Council. I support everything that they're doing. I love the cherry trees, the inclusive playground, all the native landscaping that's going in, the cultural enrichment, the lovely additions to Powell with the skate park and the pump track and the redone basketball fields and the moving of hopefully the moving of the dog park so we can have that beautiful gateway going into 5th Street. It's just a fabulous design, and I really want to thank MIG for taking all of our comments and listening to us as a community and putting them forth. I can't wait to see it. I've lived, in fact, I live right underneath the flight path for the Oxnard Airport. I'm very intimately aware of how the airplanes fly over this area. I have an airplane viewing mound, I think, in my backyard. So I'm excited about this, and we really need this as a city. The community around it has been looking at that empty field for many years. I went to the Old Oxnard High School, and it's time. It's time for us to have something beautiful and something we can be proud of in this area. And I just really hope that you, as the authority, approve this and we get our part. So thank you, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Angela. And I believe the next speaker is Mr. Roger Poirier.
Yes, thank you. Great meeting. Great job, Meg. It was nice to see old friends in this meeting. Supervisor Ramirez, I'd just like to let you know that before Ventura built their inclusive playground, Oxnard actually created first playground with inclusive equipment at Durley Park. And going forward, all of our playgrounds will be fully inclusive. Then the ones coming up will be at Community Center Park East and Wilson Park. So we're doing very well with the various differently abled communities in Oxnard. This has been a great process. Nick, you're doing a great job running the show, and I really appreciate Meg's efforts. I do have a question. I'm a little confused about the conditions that are listed in the packet based on, I don't know, did we clear up the question of the pavilion? Is it no longer an issue for this body to consider whether or not they're going to approve the design? Because the question of the navigation easement, if that's required, I don't know what FAA Form 7460 is. What are the mitigation measures that are necessary in order to win approval? I mean, are we going to have to make any kind of concessions or agreements, or is the design up to par with this board? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poirier. Nick or Mr. Boas, was there anything else that you wanted to add? I mean, as we understand these, the conditions, including this structural question on the amphitheater has been covered, correct?
Yeah, the response that we provided hopefully will suffice for this board. And then I believe the conditions previously mentioned are pretty standard for construction within this runway protection zone. I don't think there's anything out of the norm for this type of thing. So.
Thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised for public comment. So we'll just make another call for any comments. And in the meantime, I see Dr. Fussell has a raised hand.
Yeah, I want to ask about the basketball court, the lights on the court at night. Will the orientation be such that you couldn't see those, at least the glare at night? Because people landing at night, that could blind them momentarily. So I'm wondering, have you taken that into consideration?
I can answer that. All of the lighting that we're proposing for the park will be dark sky compliant and fully shielded to minimize concerns of glare.
Okay.
Councilmember Perrella? Oh, excuse me, Dr. Fussell, was that was all? Okay, I saw your hand go
Yeah,
down.
I just wanted to make certain that they had took that in consideration and had remedied the problem.
Absolutely, great. Yeah, great point, Dr. Fussell. Thank you, Councilmember Perrella.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. Mr. Portier asked a very specific question about a very specific rule. I didn't hear the response for that question that Mr. Portier, member of the public, asked. Can we get a direct answer to his question?
Councilmember Perrella, which question were you referring to?
I would recommend, because I don't know the question, but I know that Mr. Portier used some numbers with respect to the staff report, something in the staff report according to a certain rule or specification, and he asked specifically how is that going to work, and it wasn't addressed.
Thank you.
I'm sure staff was taking notes.
Yeah, Mr. Boas, I think, so if I understood correctly from Mr. Poirier's question, he was referring to the conditions included, which include the filing of certain forms with the FAA. And I believe that was answered, but if it's possible for maybe you to go through the 4 conditions and any comments to assure and reassure that these conditions are being met, and as the recommendation is going to be acted upon today by the airport authority, will be fitting of this recommendation.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I apologize. I do not actually have the conditions in front of me for that report, but I specifically, the FAA form, the standard form, is a form that will be completed by the consultant for this project. That will be filed with the FAA, that mostly deals with structure height and the lighting comments that came up tonight. So we're prepared to give that to the FAA to get their concurrence with the restrictions for this project. And the navigation easement, I believe, was the other specific constraint, and that is a standard procedure for projects within the runway protection zone that have to be filed.
Chair Lopez, may I ask, since this is a airport authority organization and Mr. Freitas is their general manager, Mr. Freitas, you agree with that response?
Yes, this is Director Freitas. The 4 requirements are structural coverage not more than 25%. Clearly in this park design, you don't see that. The navigation easement, that's just something that would be issued to the county. That is, as mentioned, a practice, standard practice, and then filed in 7460 form. So that is where the design of the project goes to the FAA to make sure there are no obstructions. They also look at things like lighting that Dr. Fussell mentioned, make sure that that would not interfere with the aircraft operations at the airport. And the last is your typical NEPA, which is your federal version of the California CEQA. Those are just standard processes that have to be gone through. So we do not see any challenges from our side. We will have comments on things like the types of foliage. There are things that near airports, you don't want necessarily things that attract a lot of birds. So we will provide those comments in writing to the city of Oxnard. But that's it.
Thank you very much. And thank you both city and county staff for answering that question. And thank you, Chair, for letting me ask it.
Supervisor Ramirez?
Thank you. I just will, I'll make a motion, but first I'd like to support. I would just read from the staff report. Department of Airport staff acknowledged that the project's design, along with the conditions as proposed, would make the land use conditionally acceptable. So with that and all of the great discussion, congratulations to the city and to MIG and to the community. I move to support the recommendation. This is compatible with the airport.
I second the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion from Supervisor Ramirez, a second by Dr. Fussell. Can we take a roll call vote, please?
Chair Lopez, we do have a written comment that I need to read.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. The comment is from Joe Gosland. It reads, I would like to know if the residents near and around the new proposed campus park project have been notified about the very real probability that lead toxins are being released into the atmosphere and land around the airport from planes using leaded fuel at Oxnard Airport. Have any of the authority members reviewed the study on the Reed Hillview Airport in Santa Clara yet? This study found elevated levels of lead in the blood of the children living near the airport. You are doing a disservice to the community and your constituents if you approve this park without that review, as this is potentially a very serious health issue. Respectfully submitted, Joe Gosland. And that concludes the written comments for this item.
Thank you, Leah. Supervisor Ramirez, did you have any additional comments?
No, I just want to move the recommended action.
Thank you. And Councilmember Perello?
Yes. Is there legal staff from either side to address the lady's question?
We do not have any legal staff here today, but that is something that we can ask for a follow-up, Mr. Freitas.
And I understand that, and I know that we all, especially you do a terrific job of running it, but sometimes we take a vote before we have all the information. I don't agree, but I have not read the Santa Clara thing. I trust the staff to know what's up and what's not up. But when it comes to hanging my hook and avoiding the county getting sued or the city getting sued, that's why we hire legal, and I'm very unimpressed. Unimpressed that no legal staff is here from either party. That's my comments. Thank you.
I'll just make this comment, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, that it is an issue of concern that I think has to be addressed later on in this meeting or other meetings. But I don't think it should hang up this project at all, any more than it hangs anything else up. So I ask that we vote.
Thank you, Supervisor Ramirez and Mr. Perello, for your comments. We do have time later on in the meeting for any comments from authority members, as well as any requests for future agenda items. So I think that would be an appropriate time for any request. So if we can take the roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilmember Perello?
Yes.
Chair Lopez?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Fussell?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And Chair Santangelo, I believe the next item remains under the Oxnard Authority. So if it's okay, I can proceed with that one.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consideration of resolution authorizing remote teleconference meetings. Do we have any report from staff or any additional comments on this?
The only item.
Go ahead.
The only item I'd like to add is that after speaking with County Council, there is a slight change that it is a 30-day period or the next scheduled meeting. So in the future, we should not have to do any special meetings if we've got a couple days that go past the standard 30-day meeting. Just only item to report.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. Supervisor Ramirez?
I want to say I totally support this, and I'm sorry that we're still in the pandemic. I recently contracted COVID, and it's no fun, and that's why I'm sitting out here instead of inside my house. I'm getting better. I had access to medications and stuff, but I'm so grateful we're able to do this work and government work virtually. It's, you know, it's a dangerous situation, so please be safe, everybody. I'd like to move the recommended action if there's no other comments.
Second.
Thank you, Supervisor Ramirez, for the motion, second by Councilmember Perrello. Can we take a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilmember Perrello?
Yes.
Chair Lopez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fussell?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And Supervisor Ramirez, we're glad to see you are doing better and that you will be back in person as you recover. I'll hand it back to Chair Santangelo.
Thank you. And ditto, Supervisor Ramirez. I'm glad you're feeling
good. Thank you.
Better. And it looks like the next item for Camarillo is the same resolution for remote teleconference meetings.
I'll move the suggested action.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Mayor Molche and a second from Mr. Baer. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez?
Yes.
Mayor Molche?
Yes.
Chair Santangelo?
Yes.
Vice Chair Baer?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay. And then we will move on to the next item, which is approval of an authorization for the Director of Airports or designee to sign the second amendment to lease with Channel Islands Aviation and the third amendment to lease with Aviation Partners. We have a staff report.
Chair Santangelo, this is Keith. I want to introduce our airport lease manager, Madeline, who will take this item and brief the authority.
Good evening, authority members. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm bringing this item to you tonight. This is concerning Channel Islands Aviation and its affiliated company, Aviation Partners. Leah, I believe you have a slide that shows the location of the two properties. Right. So Channel Islands Aviation is located where the Blue Star, and Aviation Partners hangar is where the Red Star is located. These two leases have different lease terms. You may have heard that the businesses were recently transferred to a new ownership entity from the Obermans to a new entity named Sky 805 LLC. This company is made up of a couple of partners, one of which is Ron Razik and Nick Martino. Those are the primary members, and there are other shareholders as well. This was a stock sale. So they have stepped into the shoes and are now the tenants for both of these leases. And they have requested that we add a financing subordination language to both leases so that they are able to borrow money to make improvements to both properties. So it's something we're very excited about. The language that's proposed for both leases is similar to language that's we've used for Sun Air and also for RK Art Cloud 9. and has, of course, been reviewed by County Council. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Madeline. Let's see, Mr. Bear, I see you have your hand raised.
I do. This may be a question for County Council, Madeline, but I'll pose the question. I'm looking at the third amended lease. It's page 42 in the agenda packet. And it talks about construction loans and permanent loans. And then in paragraph 5, it makes reference to the permanent loan only by an institutional lender. And I'm wondering if by inference that means that the construction loan does not have to be by an institutional lender, given the way the language is written.
As you mentioned, I can't address that in specificity, but I can say that all loan documents are allowed to be reviewed by the county. So I imagine that issue would be addressed at the time, but we can certainly ask County Council to opine on that. But the concern is really the subordination by the county. So it's not who's lending, it's just the subordination that we're discussing.
Well, my concern, though, is that if indeed the construction loan can be from a Cayman Islands bank, for example, and something goes sideways with that loan, and now the county is enmeshed in all these issues with an offshore lender. And if they're going to require institutional lenders for the permanent loan, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't require permanent institutional lenders for the construction loan as well. So I think that this is something County Council should weigh in on. If we don't have Mr. Temple with us tonight, then perhaps we should defer this till next meeting.
If I could,
as far as, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
As far as the lending, it's really a relationship between the tenant and the lender. And I don't know that we have the information that at this time of what type of loan could be made, but construction loans are generally made by a variety of banking institutions or lending institutions. So Scott, I don't know that can be addressed tonight.
I don't think
language, I believe, is vague enough that
Madeline,
we cover both.
As lawyers, we don't like vague language, and my concern is, you're right. It is a relationship between Sky 805 LLC and the lender, but if there's a default there, the blowback is going to be to the county as well. As you can bet on it.
Mr. Bear, Keith from the airport. What I would offer is that we will take your question and ask that of County Council before we take this document to the board. That we give enough time to correct that. If they see an issue with that, then we could make that adjustment in that language.
I'd like to hear from County Council. I get what you're saying, Director, but I just, and Director, you and I have discussed this. I just want to be sure that if we're going to have all of these facilities tied up with one entity, or one entity be part of the relationship that's involved in these facilities and the Cloud9 project, that everything is, all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. And if this language in the lease creates a potential for a problem down the road, let's button that up now and not have to deal with it down the road.
I can also add that typically we do have construction bonds when construction is underway. That's part of the lease requirement. So that's generally covering the construction period.
But again, if we're dealing with an offshore lender, for example, do we want that headache? If we can require institutional lenders, which is defined as national or state bank or savings and loan institution, if we can require institutional lenders for the permanent loan, we should require it for the construction loan as well.
Supervisor Ramirez, I believe you had your hand up next.
My question would be to Madeline Harry. Am I saying it right?
Mhm.
Really accurate. Can read that. Thank you. Is there urgency for this particular lessee?
Well, I know that they're trying to get financing to make improvements to the site. Something that we're keen on seeing happen as well.
So will 30 days cause any appreciable downside to get this issue, clarified?
I can't speak to that.
Can I make a recommendation to deal with the issue? I would propose that we approve it conditionally pending the go-ahead from County Council that resolves the issues that Mr. Bear has raised in a very appropriate amount of time, very quickly.
We could probably address that in the motion that's made.
Yeah. So I would make that motion at the appropriate time.
Okay. Mr. Perello, I believe you were next.
Yes, thank you. And I know that I have no vote in this, but I do have a say as a member of the airport authority. We're very fortunate to have pilots that sit on this airport authority. They've warned us of things of safety and danger. Mr. Fussell did earlier about the glare of a pilot potentially blinding him just as he's coming in to land an airplane at X number of miles an hour over homes. And now we have an attorney that is expressing concerns that sound very valid to me. And I do know that words matter. To my knowledge, we have two attorneys on this board. Mr. Ramirez is an attorney and Mr. Bear is an attorney. It does not seem out of line for the question that Mr. Bear has asked, in my opinion, as one member on this board, to have this come back, because after the individual took the initiative to ask the question, he may have a follow-up question based on what information he gets. And I think, and I know I would be very interested in this follow-up question because the response is important. And to give permission based on, we'll find the facts later. I know that Councilmember Ramirez, when she was a council member in Oxnard, knows that we have done things like that. And they have come back to bite us in you know where. So I think it's a mistake, and I can appreciate the gentleman needing loans, but I was unaware of this situation. And when we have somebody with some expertise, the man's an attorney, apparently in good standing, got a license, and I'm not making jokes or innuendos on that. He's asking a valid question and we can't answer it, which gets back to, again, we're making decisions and where the hell is the legal staff? And I'm not trying to spend anybody's money, but we're hanging our hats and we're putting staff in a position. And in the past, we've had staff general managers that have been hung out to dry when they've been put in these things, and then things changed and the staff general managers had to leave. So I think the gentleman is right in asking it. And I think it's a mistake to just approve it, move it on down the road and hope that the question is answered the way we want, not knowing if Mr. Baird would have a fantastic follow-up question, because usually the opening question is not the good one. The follow-up is the one that's the drop dead question. Thank you. Those are my comments, and thank you for letting me speak on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Perello. Supervisor Long.
Thank you. Could I ask Director Freitas or Madeline, is this a standard contract that we use when tenants are doing improvements and so forth?
Yes, it's the same language that we've used in the RKR lease as well as the Sun Air Aviation lease.
Okay. The reason being is I know that County Council has definitely reviewed that. I know many others have reviewed those and not had have been comfortable with how the contract is written and so forth. So with that, and knowing the knowledge of the past and that this has been used, I would agree with Supervisor Ramirez in moving this forward with that conditional question, knowing that we have past history in utilizing this and so forth, and know that County Council has looked at this pretty in depth several times. But I do understand and hear all of you having County Council there. It's not always as easy to have your questions answered here if they're not there. And like we always look at things like this and ask County Council or Keith beforehand as well. So appreciate the comments, but I would agree with Supervisor Ramirez.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mr. Perrella.
Yes, just a clarification. Mr. Bear, I understood from your question that a specific change in the wording had been a specific change in the normal wording is in this contract. Am I mistaken, or is that what I understood you to say?
I frankly, council member, I'm not sure what the standard language is. I'm just looking at the 2 paragraphs in the proposed 3rd amendment. One talks about construction and permanent loans, and the next one talks about only the permanent loan shall be from an institutional lender. And my suggestion is that the construction loan be from institutional lenders as well. And that's why I would like to see paragraph 5 amended to reflect, in essence, what's in paragraph 4. The 2 paragraphs just be harmonized. And to Supervisor Long,
I appreciate that. Thank
you.
To
Supervisor Long's point, Councilman Perrella, I get that this has been reviewed and this is a standard form contract, and maybe this idea or this issue has never been identified, but I just would like to be sure that if it's an issue that it's fixed, and if it's a non-issue, then it's a non-issue. But I think it's worth hearing from County Council on it.
Thanks, Mr. Bear. Thank you, everybody. I think we should see if there are any public comments at this point.
Chair Santangelo, I'm going to go ahead and make the announcement, and then it does look like we do have a public comment. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item 6D, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star, then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. We are going to be promoting Mr. Martino. So hold on, give us just a moment. Mr. Martino, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, authority members, for allowing me this time. I just been kind of following along. I apologize for the delay in jumping on. But I did just want to kind of throw out there that RKR and Sky 805, as a representative of Sky 805 and an owner, we would support a change to the language. It is a time-sensitive matter. We do have other partners and lenders, and there is some financial incentives as well to moving this along. And we do want to work with the Department of Airports to start modernizing the facilities and kind of putting that pathway forward. But as far as our lender go and our relationship with our lender, it is an institutional lender out of Chicago. It's the same lender that worked with us on Cloud 9, and we do have a long-term relationship with them. It's Signature Bank of Chicago. They're very involved in aviation across the country, and so they understand. And they've been great partners and advocates for small GA2. And that's really what we're trying to do here.
Sounds like the volume dropped.
Yeah, we lost Mr. Martino.
Mr. Martino, are you there? Well, sounds like we lost him. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. We'll just carry on. Unless Mr. Martino comes back, please let us know if you are. Okay, so what is Mr.
I'm
Bear?
sorry. Sorry. Can you hear me?
There he is.
Sorry. I apologize. So I just was hoping if there's anyone that had any questions, I'd be happy to answer. So I only have a minute 30 here.
Did you say, Mr. Martino, excuse me for interrupting and forgive me, Chair. Did you say that you would be happy to change the language to institutional?
Yeah, that's not something we would disagree with. I actually would agree with Mr. Bear that yeah, we wouldn't want the county or the airports to be put in any type of situation.
Okay, I think that resolves our issue.
It does. I have a motion.
Mr. Bear, go ahead.
I move that we approve the lease subject to paragraph 5. The first line, it would be line 36 in the agenda packet on page, what page is this? Page 42 of the agenda packet. That line be changed to read that the permanent loan or construction loan shall be made only by an institutional lender. That solves all my concerns.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Bear and a second by Supervisor Ramirez. Let's go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Before we have the roll call vote, can I see if we can get Mr. Martino back with us?
Sure, Mr. Martino, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
So, Mr. Martino, subject to the way I phrased the motion, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to defer to council, but in principle, yes, I would say yes.
Okay, then that's the motion, seconded by Supervisor Ramirez.
Okay, let's go ahead with the vote.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay. We will move on to the next item, which is combined Camarillo and Oxnard, and this is a review of the fiscal year 22-23 proposed budget.
Chairs, thank you, Director Freitas. I'm going to break from my norm. You know that I like to keep everything short and to the point, but I think that the budget, you've all seen the budget over the years. There's a lot of numbers, and that's going to come at the end. But I want to start by saying that what I'm about to present in no way detracts from all the work and the commitment the airport is and will be doing for the community regarding noise-related issues. But we've heard many times members of the community thinking that they are, a lot of tax dollars are going to keeping these airports running, and it's basically all these tax dollars that do that. But what I'm going to offer tonight is it's not that. And let me run through kind of the big picture. Let's start with the next slide. So what I'm going to talk about is the national plan for the airports across the country, and then kind of work into, where do all these grant dollars come from that we use to improve the two airports, and then hit a economic benefit study that we did about 2019, and then we'll get into the typical budget. So kind of the broad all the way down to the weeds, if you will, in this presentation. So let's kick it off. So the NIPIAS, I think all of you will be surprised maybe to hear that the federal government has a plan for all the airports in the United States. There is a master plan. That's the National Plan of Integrated Airport System, the NIPIAS. And basically they are accounting for all the airports in the United States and how they work together for the national transportation aviation system. That the plan started back in the 1940s and then was upgraded to what we all now know, the NIPIAS, in 1984. All right, let's move on. So there are more than 19,000 airports in the United States. Airports, heliports, seaplane bases, ultralight, glider ports, balloon ports. But only 3,300 of those are recognized as being important in the national system across the United States. And only those in the NIPIAS are eligible for FAA grant, AIP grant funding. Let's go to the next slide. So here's how it's kind of broken down. If you look at the top category, those 3,300 airports, and it basically gets up, the first and the second, the primary and the non-primary. So the primary are the big airports that handle commercial service, and the non-primary are, for the most part, the general aviation airports, and they have rankings again in the primary for commercial service, large, medium, small, non-hub airports, and the GA airports, the critical ones, national, regional, but local, basic, and then unclassified is how they fall out. Let's go to the next slide. So I tried to highlight in the yellow is the top that I think are most important. So large hub airports are airports like LAX or San Diego. You know, medium airports, you're talking Orange County, you know, and airports of that size, Van Nuys, things like that. But the top line, look at the middle column, the percentage of total enplanements. So those 30 large airports in the United States handle 71% of all the people that are traveling on an airline. So they're moving the bulk of the people. But when you look at the second from right percentage of total operations, they only move 13.3% of the airplanes around the United States. And then you move down to that middle column, the GA airports, national, which Camarillo is ranked as one of the top 92 GA airports in the country. And then Oxnard is one of the regional airports, one of the 482. You combine those two numbers of operations, you know, there's almost 9%, 8.9 and 23.3. They move, those two types of airports move a third of the traffic. And then all of the GA airports move basically 2/3 of the traffic as opposed to the larger commercial size. And why does that matter? Because that's the question that we hear a lot is, well, you know, we have LAX and we have Burbank, you know, Santa Barbara, if we want to travel somewhere, why do we need these GA airports? Well, that's the key, is that these smaller airports, GA airports, relieve the traffic from those big airports. It would, you know, you all know the traffic on Highway 101. Could you imagine if every morning and every day, all the kids on their skateboards and bikes also were sharing the Highway 101 with you? It would be gridlock every single day, all the time. Well, that's the same with the airports. That's why we have, again, these smaller airports that handle some of the GA type traffic, is to relieve those larger airports. And that's why it's part of the national system, the smaller airports with the big airports, medium-sized airports, things like that, to relieve that traffic. Next slide. So here is all the NIPIAS airports in the lower 48 United States. Those are all the dots, you know, large airports, medium-sized, and then the GA airports across the United States. Next slide kind of shows our area. You know, if you find there to the middle right, you see Oxnard and Camarillo, basically between two, you know, Santa Barbara there to the north, if you will, up the coast. And then we're between, obviously, LAX and Burbank. But there's only a few of those commercial service airports, you know, LAX, Burbank, Ontario, Long Beach, Orange County, all the way down to San Diego. A lot of the smaller airports are there. Again, those are relieving the traffic so that we all can use the system. Want to go catch a commercial flight, those systems are freed up to do the business that they're set up to do, as our smaller airports are set up to do what we do. All right, next slide. So how is this all funded? Again, it's not your federal income tax dollars that are paying for this. It is the Airport and Airway Trust Fund. That is a fund that was developed to pay for the aviation system. You know, more than 90% of it is covered for everything related to the aeronautics system. And its bulk of it comes from you buy a ticket to go on an airline, and 7.5% of that ticket goes to the Aviation Trust Fund. Let's use the next slide. So again, you see in the blue, the bulk of that is your ticket tax. That's the largest percentage of the annually, and at least in 2019, almost $16 billion were collected. Ticket tax, fuel taxes, cargo transportation. You're flying between the United States and a foreign country, there's a tax. Next slide kind of breaks that down, all the percentages. So again, domestic ticket tax, 7.5%. You got a segment tax between two airports. That's, $4.30. Flights between continental U.S., Alaska, Hawaii, there's a fee for that. So all of those, kind of the breakdown of the fees that go into annually the Aviation Trust Fund that pays for improvements at all of the airports that are in the NIPIAs. All right, next slide. So again, Aviation Trust Fund, the bulk of it goes towards grants to help improvements, our runway improvements we did at Oxnard last year, that kind of thing. Same thing that we're looking at improvements to do here at Camarillo. The Part 150 noise studies we're looking to do at both airports, those would be covered in it. But there's facilities and equipment, research, engineering, and then the operations, things like that. All right, next slide. So here is, now we move to the economic impact analysis that we did in 2019. This is probably the most important slide. Again, is our two airports, and you'll see that when we get into the numbers, they're self-sufficient. Between the two airports, we generate enough revenue to do the things we need to do. We get the grant monies for larger capital projects as well. So we do not take any local state taxes, county taxes, any of that. We are self-sufficient as an enterprise fund. But besides that, there are two economic engines that each year generate, and this is back in 2019, we continue to grow as we build new businesses. Camarillo was $230 million to the local economy. Oxnard by itself, $51 million. 1,700 jobs at Camarillo, 310 at Oxnard. And then we talk about the payrolls. Camarillo, 60 businesses are based there. You'll see that in the next slide, and then 15 at Oxnard. But the key is the very bottom line is that all of that generates tax dollars back to the state, to the city, and local school districts. Camarillo in 2019 was more than almost $11 million a year going back to city, county, school districts. Oxnard was $2.1 million. To give you an idea, what's in things like that, obviously the businesses here have sales tax, things like that, there's property taxes, but just an individual tenant of ours that owns one of our small hangars and maybe has like a Cessna 182, they spend about $1,000 a year in taxes to come back to the city, county, schools to have the privilege of having the airplane here at the airport. So you multiply that by all the airplanes that are based here, and then you take that to the extreme. We've got a few $30 million jets that are based here. That's a 1% tax base. We're talking $300,000 per year for that large jet to be based in this community. So that's the last one of that slide. Do we have any more? So here's a list of the businesses we have: aeronautical business, non-aeronautical businesses. Camarillo has the luxury of not only having aviation facilities, but a fairly large business park. So that's where you see all of the names and types of businesses, both aeronautical and non-aeronautical. We have a few government entities within the county. They do pay going rate to the airport Department of Airports. That's a requirement of the FAA that we collect fair market rent for the facilities that we rent and facility. And then we move to Oxnard. It doesn't have the same size property, a little over 220 acres as opposed to the 650 acres at Camarillo, but still has aeronautical businesses, non-aeronautical, and obviously some government entities there. So I want to give that precursor to big picture, and now we're going to go into, and I'll introduce our accounting manager Jamal, I think, is here with us, and also Aaron is going to be talking when we get down to the AIP projects in a little more detail. But Jamal, if you'll kick us off into this.
Yes, I'm Jamal Ghazali, accounting manager for the record. Good evening, chairs, supervisors, and authority members. This first slide is the airport's actual financial results for the 9 months ending March 31st. You'll see that Oxnard had a net operating loss of $195,200 for depreciation.
Camarillo came in at 2.5 million before depreciation, netting out 2.368 before depreciation. I wanted to talk about depreciation for just a second. Does anybody have any questions on what depreciation is? Perhaps I can give just a brief description. It's the cost of an asset divided by the estimated useful life for that asset. So it allocates that value over time to account for the decline in value of the asset over time. What I mean by that is when you do the accounting, you expense a proportion of that asset into the income statement. We call it depreciation expense. The offset of that expense is accumulated depreciation. So over time, that accumulated depreciation number grows and grows, and that that gets netted against the asset, the original asset amount on the balance sheet. So that's what I mean when I say it accounts for the decline in value over time. So net of the two airports combined is a gain of $2,368,000. Any questions on that?
Yes, I do have a question. Excuse me, Madam Chair, for jumping in. It's my understanding depreciation is generally seen on most financial statements. So I'm not familiar with I'd like to understand why it's not on our financial statements.
It is. It's on all of our financial statements. It's on our budget. It's in our projection.
On our budget. Okay, so it's in there.
There's a line before and after depreciation. We're an enterprise fund, and an enterprise fund in accounting is treated just like any business in terms of accounting. So when we show you our financial statements, our income statement and balance sheet and cash flow statements, those mirror what a private entity would show.
Okay, great. It does. It is standard. So I can see there's looks like a difference with and without. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Next slide, please. This is a summary of the budget. You have the detailed budgets there. This is just a summary of the budgets on a very high level compared to last fiscal year, 21-22. So we showed our total appropriations, $8 million this year. And the detail for those appropriations are in the budget versus the revenues. We show a big jump in revenues. And the reason there is for the past several years, we've held our revenues standstill due to the pandemic. And the previous director took a very conservative approach, which I think was correct. Because we really didn't know what the pandemic was going to do. So that's why there is such a big jump in revenue between 21 and 22. So the net operating gain for FY 22-23 is $621,473. Next slide, please. This slide gives us a combined revenues by source. And I just briefly want to give the non-aviation folks a description of what some of those abbreviations mean. GA fees at the top represents fuel flowage, the landing fees, and our transients. We have a few transients that we have. The non-aviation revenue represents the business purpose revenue. That's a huge portion of our revenue, especially at Camarillo, because of the size of our business park there. ASP or FBO, those are made up of examples, Air 7, CIA, Sun Air, Golden West. Miscellaneous aviation is made up of members such as Orbit Helicopter, Samba, and CAF. Terminal revenue is the revenue that you typically get from airport terminals, such as auto rental fees, parking, and some vending. Hangars and tie downs, that's pretty self-explanatory.
Next slide.
I have a question on that slide, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Go back to that slide. Underneath miscellaneous, I remember from the business accounting class, whenever miscellaneous gets up in the percentages, and we have it here as the, pretty high percentage.
I don't understand.
You follow my question is miscellaneous. We have it as 14%, $1.2 million. It's a pretty high number compared to the other ones that are small, 5%, 3%. It's all, and you have ASP identified, whatever ASP was, and you did say it. But when we say something miscellaneous, that could be everything from the kitchen sink to the shoes. Do we consider breaking that down when you get up above 10%? Or is this standard operating procedure, best business practices?
This, I'll let Director Freitas speak to that.
I'm sorry, say the question again, Member Perrell.
Question is, very simply, miscellaneous is over 10%, but it's $1.2 million. And the gentleman identified some of the things. When we have something over 10%, I recall from business accounting class was the accountant for Caterpillar Tractor. And he talked about when things get over 10%, you better identify what those numbers are. If they get to 10% or less, can be miscellaneous. But when it gets above 10%, somebody someday is going to ask you, what's in miscellaneous? So when I saw the number, I'm asking, do we consider breaking it down a little further? Because we go from a drop of 14 to 5%. That's a pretty big
We're losing you. We're losing you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can answer the question. The slides we have are just an overview of the package and, of our budget. But for sure in the future, or we could, break that down to further detail if that's the desire of the authority.
Okay, and Mr. Freitas, when we get to, I had my hand up when slide 27 was on, and I'll wait till the end, but who's ever running the meeting, if somebody asks a question, a board member, a specific slide, I hope we address it at that time. But thank you for the response, Mr. Freitas.
Okay.
Next slide, please. And by the way, Member Perillo, all those numbers can be, we can get you detail of what makes up all those numbers if you wish. This is Camarillo Airport by source, and as you can see, the non-aviation makes up 42%, which is the business park, the huge proportion of Camarillo's airport revenue. Hangars and tie downs is pretty significant too, at 23% at Camarillo Airport. Miscellaneous aviation, Airport Properties Limited is a huge contributor there. And we have some other, as I mentioned, some other things there that make up that. Next slide, please. And this is Oxnard. As you can see, there's a big difference between non-aviation, only 18%, versus the ASP or FPO portion, which is sizable comparatively. Terminal, of course, Oxnard is where we have the terminal, and that's where all that revenue comes from. Hangars and tie downs, again, it is a pretty significant portion of Oxnard's revenue. Next slide, please. And that's it for me. Any questions? Thank you. I'll pass the next slide over to Aaron Powers to speak to our capital projects.
Good evening, Chairs Lopez and Santangelo and authority members.
I'm happy to speak tonight about the capital projects planned for fiscal year 2022 and 23. Starting with Camarillo Airport, the way a capital projects is organized in the budget is typically broken up into two categories: grant projects and non-grant projects. So here for for Oxnard Airport, I think I had my slides mixed up. For Oxnard Airport, the capital projects that are scheduled for this upcoming fiscal year include the reconstruction of taxiway connectors Alpha through Echo at just about $7 million. And with a grant funds anticipated of approximately 90%, a little bit more with state contribution, and the net cost to the airport would be about $380,000. Just as a side note, this is the project estimate that was estimated at the time going out to bid. We do have a bid. We did have bids come in, and we are working with AFA to understand what funding may be available to move forward. And at the moment, they have indicated that they may only have funding for our base bid, which would mean that we would be able to fund the reconstruction of 2 out of the 5 connector taxiways. And we'll have more information as that develops with the FAA for future meetings as well. The second grant project that the airport is working towards securing is a Part 150 noise study. This would be a noise compatibility study that would be funded by the FAA, and that would allow us to capture baseline noise information and include community outreach to make sure that we're capturing today's current levels and finding alternatives if they're available. Additionally, Oxnard Airport is a Part 139 airport, and our firefighting vehicles that were required as a Part 139 airport to have are aging. And so the airport is looking towards securing potentially a replacement in the future years.
Ms. Powers?
Yes.
May I ask you to say, what is it, a Part 139? What does that mean?
That means that Oxnard Airport has a certificate that allows commercial service, which commercial service airports require certain minimum levels of fire response or first aid response.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. And then moving on from so the total grant projects planned for Oxnard Airport at this point is a little bit over $8.4 million, with the net cost to the airport of just under $500,000. Moving on to the non-grant funded projects, these projects are typically projects that are not eligible for federal funding, including maintenance and repair items to some of our facilities. And that's what we're looking to program. And that includes perimeter fence and gate updates for our Oxnard Airport, some pavement repair along taxiway Foxtrot. And when we talk about repair, we're looking at some crack seal perhaps and some seal coats to help bridge us to a planned future grant project. And then we also are looking to reserve some funding for updating our facility surveys. Those would be for our roofs, our HVAC system, and our pavement surveys. These are the key documents that the airport tries to utilize in programming, making sure we're trying to meet our programming needs for the future based on the condition of our facilities. And then we also have identified the need to update the airport's fuel farm. We currently have an underground system that, when it was built, was the preferred method of storing fuel. And we, however, the facility is starting to reach its end of life cycle repairs and getting and making sure that we have the proper technicians is actually becoming more complicated. So we're looking to the future to site an above ground fuel farm. And the projects that we're looking to program then for the non-grants totaled $790,000 because there is no grant dollars related to these items. All of that would be out of pocket. And so for Oxnard Airport, the total projects that we are looking to program for is just a little bit over 9.2 million, with receiving some federal or significant federal funding, which leaves us with an out-of-pocket cost of just over 1.2 million. Oh, it looks like Authority Member Bearer has a question.
I do. And maybe this is a product of drinking water from a fire hose, Ms. Powers, and maybe I missed it. Did you include in here anything about upgrading the security at the airports? Did I miss that?
Can I ask in which manner you're talking about?
I have had conversations with Director Freitas, and I know that there's been discussion, and I think they're moving forward with it, security cameras and things like that at the airports.
So that's that's an item in our current budget.
Got
So
it.
that is in progress, but it's not reflected in our next fiscal year budget.
So all the money, even if the money is paid next year, it's out of this year's budget, earmarked out of this year's budget.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And my understanding, and Jamal can correct me if I'm wrong, is that those funds are then also anticipated in the full budget document for as an expensed item.
That's correct. The county does a process called rebudgeting. So if there's money out there that is appropriated and we don't spend the money, after the year end closes, we go through a process with the CEO's office where what's called a rebudget. So that money moves over to next fiscal year. We definitely won't spend any of it this fiscal year because it's still going through the purchase order process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so next slide, please. And for Camarillo Airport's capital projects, again, we have our split structure of grant-funded projects and non-grant. For Camarillo's grant-funded projects that we're working to procure grants for, we are looking for a Part 150 noise study, same as Oxnard. We are working very hard in coordination with the FAA to try to secure funds to move these projects forward. And then we also are working on, we will be working on an environmental study and preliminary engineering for the future Camarillo runway and taxiway reconstruction that's planned for 2025. These projects take multiple years to actually get to a point for a construction grant, and we are working with the FAA to make sure that we're meeting those initial steps. Those grant projects are totaling just a little bit over $1 million for total cost, and with a net cost anticipated, should we receive the grants, of just about $56,000. For the non-grant funded projects, again, this is projects that aren't eligible for federal funding. They often are maintenance and repair items. We have some HVAC units that are due for replacement at our
airport headquarters building. We have some taxiway foxtrot striping that we would like to schedule. We also have some perimeter fence and gate upgrades or rehabilitations to work on. And then we also have some pavement projects, a parking lot in the business park at 295 Willis. We just as over at Oxnard, we also are looking to update our facility surveys. We also are planning to extend some spectrum fiber to bring high-speed internet to more areas of the airport. And we were fortunate enough in 2021 for the federal government to deed over the former a small parcel in the business park adjacent to some of our current property, and that was used by the Department of Homeland Security previously, and that property has a very small building on it. And so as part of our new ownership, we're going to do just an environmental survey to identify any materials, asbestos, in the mastic or other items as we will be contemplating demolition, so that it can be part of our redevelopment area in the business park. And then our, the Camarillo Airport or the airports are looking at adding some additional positions to help support all the work that's going on. And as part of that, we're going to be looking on how we can best use the space that we have in a more efficient way. And so we have an office preliminary study for a potential office remodel on the books. Those non-grant funded projects total a little over $1.1 million. And again, this is all out of pocket. And so the total capital projects scheduled for next year at Camarillo is about 2.1 million, with some revenue from grants received, with a net cost to the airport of 1.16. And I'm happy to answer any questions that might be out there. All right, then I think we can go to the next slide and hand it back to Jamal. Thank you.
Actually, I'll take it from here, Jamal, if you want. So this is just a snapshot of the 5-year, and this gets, talks about the depreciation. This is the cash reserves that the Airport Enterprise Fund has and is projected to have over the next, 5 years. And the budget detail we will post on our website for those that want to dive into all the details. But this kind of shows the 5-year projections, and the biggest you'll see in 2025, 26, a decrease, and that mostly has to do with our projected or expected funding to replace the Camarillo Airport runway. That's a $40 million project. Typically, we would be liable to contribute, 10% of that, or about $4 million. So, but we go build our reserves up again. So this is the final, I think, slide for us on this item. Next slide, kind of just a summary, big picture, the NIPIAs, how the airports fit into the national system, and how that is all funded through the Airports and Airways Trust Fund, also known as the Aviation Trust Fund. Our most recent economic impact study we did 2019, and then the budget highlights. So open for questions. Our team is.
Mr. Bear, I see your hand first.
And really just a comment, Director Freitas and Ms. Powers, great presentation. And the gentleman from the accounting expert, I didn't get his name, Jamal, great presentation, really took a subject that could be incredibly dry and explained it well. And I'm very appreciative of that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Camarillo.
Thank you. I second the comments just made by the board member. Can we go to slide 27, please?
And Mr. Perella, could you give us an idea of what slide it is? Sometimes they're not the same numbers.
27, there was a comparison of Oxnard and
No, you're looking for the financial. No, it's not 27. Go to the comparison slide. Mr. Perella, maybe
number 27 on the bottom right-hand corner. This one showing right now says 90.
go to the economic impact.
It was the very first part of your presentation when you started to give the difference of, yes. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And that's when I put my hand up, but it didn't get seen apparently. Bingo, right there. 27, lower right-hand corner.
Perfect.
On this two Camarillo Oxnard, in the top group, under Oxnard, it says ready for passenger service. Directly across from that in Camarillo, it says annual. What does that mean, annual?
That was just
Is Camarillo going to be?
Yeah, that was just a point that these numbers are annual numbers. So the $230 million of economic output for Camarillo, that's annual. It was just a note, just a point to add. Oxnard specifically was that it still maintains its 139 certificate ready for commercial service if that opportunity comes up at this point.
So an assumption cannot be made that Camarillo potentially could be having passenger service?
For sure not. That would deviate from our joint powers agreement and does not have its 139 certificate or any of that. So no.
Thank you. You've answered my questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Perella, I'm sorry, I did not see your hand during the presentation. Supervisor Ramirez.
Yeah, thank you. Couple of questions here and an observation. Did I just hear you correctly, Mr. Freitas, that Camarillo will not have passenger service?
That would not be consistent with our joint powers agreement at this point with the county. And it does not have its commercial 139 certificate either.
But Oxnard does.
But Oxnard does still maintain that certificate, yes.
But it hasn't had passenger service, I know, for a decade at least, correct?
I believe that is correct, yes.
It's probably been 20 years since I took a plane out of there. And just as an aside, occasionally there would be, when we used to have fog, it wouldn't go forward. I have to drive to LAX anyway. Now I drive to Burbank. Just as an aside, when I earlier said the thing about depreciation, I was reading from the staff report where it said depreciation was excluded. So forgive me for that because I wasn't looking at the screen. But my observation is that there's such a distinction between the two airports in terms of economic output. And I think we need to have a real serious discussion about how to improve that or how to assess it, because having an airport in the city of Oxnard, it comes with benefits and it comes with a burden. The same is true for Camarillo. But the benefit, and I realize that, the focus is this is one airport authority with two different actual airports. But it's pretty dramatic, the difference. And I guess the question is going forward for the community, for the airport authority, for the county, how do we change that to make it more economically viable if possible? Because it's clear to me it's at this point, maybe it's not fair because of the pandemic, et cetera, and we don't have passenger service and we may not have passenger service anytime soon. I think it's pretty remote personally, just the way things are going. What we're going to do about this economic disparity, the two things. So that's an observation. No need to comment or respond, but just something I'm thinking about here. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the information to the staff who presented it.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, we should probably open this up to public comment. Looks like we do.
Yes. Chair
Pam.
Santangelo, I'm going to go ahead and make the announcement. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item 6E, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. And we do have 3 members of the public that would like to speak, so we're going to promote them to panelists. Mr. Tauber, if you would like to unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes. Mr. Tauber? We can come back.
There we go.
Oh,
Hello?
there he is.
I couldn't get my unmute to come up. Sorry about that. Yeah, in regards to the ARF truck requested in the grant budget, this vehicle is required for airports with a Part 139 certificate granted by the FAA. And this is what allows to facilitate scheduled air service. And I'm sure you know, Oxnard Airport has lost scheduled airport service in 2010 and has not returned since. This is not due to an aircraft shortage or a pilot shortage. It's strictly economically driven by the marketing demographics that airlines look at when they consider serving a market. The 2 main drivers that they look at is the market, does it have a lot of high income earners who are willing to pay a premium for airline service, and business and industry within that market that creates a demand for business travel. Most of the high income earners in Ventura County live in the Thousand Oaks Moore Park area. And since those customers are willing to pay a premium for air service, they prefer to have a direct flight to their destination, which LAX has plenty of, rather than Oxnard would being a regional airport. As for business travel, our industry here is agriculture. It generates about $5 billion a year locally and doesn't generate much business travel. Compared to Santa Rosa Airport up in Sonoma County, which does have regional airline service, its wine industry generates $100 billion annually worldwide. So we are light years away from that kind of marketing criteria. Now, under the current provisions of Oxnard's Part 139 certificate, it's limited to aircraft with 30 seats or less. These aircraft do not exist anymore in the current U.S. regional airline fleet because 20 years ago, 30-seat turboprops were abandoned for 50 to 75-seat regional jets to become more efficient. When the last carrier pulled out of Oxnard back in 2010, traffic was 600 to 700 passengers a month. That's roughly 21 passengers a day. As you can see, it's not enough to fill up one departure of the smallest regional jet. Now, I worked in the airline industry for 28 years. This is common knowledge within it. But every time this subject gets brought up before this body, the can keeps getting kicked down the road when it comes to looking into getting air service to return. In fact, 6 months ago, I brought it up in my public comments, and Councilman Camarillo, you even commented that you said it was interesting. Well, I can tell you a lot more about it and where to go to fact check. But the 3 minutes that I get allotted in this forum isn't enough time. But I will send you an email tomorrow morning to your oxnard.org email address with my contact information. If you are interested, I'm more than willing to sit down with you and anybody else who's interested to hear what I have to say, because honestly, I'm really starting to cringe at the millions of dollars being wasted on infrastructure that will never be utilized at this airport. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. The only thing that I wanted to ask is the airport, for the authority, is for the Department of Airports, please put the budget information on their website before the meeting. It's very hard to try to do any intelligent analysis And I'm assuming that the authority is going to be voting on this. And so the public really didn't have a chance to do anything other than receive and file. And as far as the Part 139, I think that there's going to be electric airplanes serving regional areas in 10 years, and Oxnard might be an ideal location to work electric airplanes into LAX or Burbank. Thanks.
And Ms. Filkins, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
I think I'm unmuted, hopefully.
Oh, yes, you are.
Okay. So a couple comments is we talk about an airport system. And I think I've made this comment in the past. It's kind of parallel to a healthcare system. Just because one facility in the system is losing money does not mean that the whole system will lose money. So as far as the balance between Camarillo and Oxnard, the viewpoint needs to be across both airports. If you take Oxnard out of the system, what is going to be the impact of Camarillo? And you may find that ultimately that creates a deficit at the overall structure within the system. Parallel in Ventura County. Take Santa Paula Hospital out of the equation because it loses money. But the services and the community support it provides may be the loss leader that creates the fact that the whole enterprise fund, as far as Ventura County health system, can operate at a profit. The other thing is that I think that there needs to be kind of a future approach to things. I think Bill Thomas made a comment about the electric vertiports. Oxnard could definitely provide that. I also can say that as far as transportation within the state, it's very expensive, especially central state, as far as getting service to major hubs like LAX or San Francisco. So that's something that should be put in place. The bottom line is, I think we need a very well-constructed study as the economic benefits of both Oxnard and Camarillo relative to the roles that Keith presented in his presentation on the budget. End of comment.
Chair
Thank you.
Santangelo, that appears to be all the public members wishing to speak.
Thank you, and thank you all for your comments. Okay, is there any discussion? Would anybody like to make a motion? Mr. Camarillo.
I think that Mr. Thomas's comment was point, Ryan. There's a lot of smart people in the public, and if they didn't get the opportunity to see the information, same time the board members, that doesn't do a service to this organization.
Okay, if nobody else has a comment, I just wanted to make one. I wanted to thank Mr. Freitas for the initial part of that presentation. You know, during last meeting, we heard some public comments that were questioning the value of the airports to our communities. And I really found it helpful to see the actual numbers, and I've written them down because, and I can speak for Camarillo, but you know, $230 million in economic output from our airport is pretty impressive and really valuable to our community. And that's just the monetary things, value.
It appears we've lost Ms. Santangelo.
I think she froze. Susan, would it work if you turn your video off so that we can hear you?
Good idea. perhaps VNA could take over at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe while she joins, Supervisor Long, I see your hand, and then followed by Councilmember Perello.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you to Director Freitas and all of the staff for putting this together. There's a lot of moving parts in working with the FAA and our cities, counties, grants to do this report. I do appreciate being able to put this online so that all of our community can see it. This page to me on the very end speaks volumes of what an asset both of our airports are. And I would ask to continue to work with our cities so that our community members know the added value. We being on the board for a while, you kind of hear from our pilots when they can fly, when they can't. One airport has better weather sometimes and so forth, but the added value for both, I think, is just a true asset for Ventura County. So when the time comes, I'll make the motion for Camarillo to approve staff recommendations. And just again, thank you for working with both the cities in regards to joint, powers and working together. And then also just, we really need to make sure people know what great assets these airports are. I just can't stress that enough because they are assets to our community and I would hate to lose them. Thank you.
I'm unfrozen and I'm back. So sorry about that. I don't know whose hand was up next. So let's see, let's go with Councilman Perello.
Thank you. I would like to thank Mr. Freitas for the very first part of the presentation, the explanation. Well done. Needed and understandable. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Ms. Powers for cool, calm, collected presentation, and the accountant. I apologize. I typically on this slide, an issue city part and the county part, questions with respect to taxes on the very last part of this slide that we're looking at, state, local, and school tax revenues paid. Is there any method that the county airport authority verifies that the taxes are paid on these assets?
I mean, the verification came as this study was done and completed by our consultant, through the tax collector within the county.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Mr. Bear.
I just wanted to comment that I think Mr. Thomas and Ms. Filkins hit on a really important point, and that is the future. And the future is electric. And a Part 139 certificate is a valuable asset, and we should maintain it, even though it's possible that we may never get regional jet service or turboprop service back to Oxnard Airport. There is the likelihood of air taxi service, electric air taxi service. I know in California, at least one company is developing it, just recently received certification from the FAA. And so I am very much supportive of the efforts to maintain the 139 certificate, the first responding equipment that we need to maintain that, and look to the future and hopefully a bright future, which includes electric air taxi service out of Oxnard Airport.
Thank you. Okay. Who's ready for the motion?
Long made the motion for Camarillo.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Chair Lopez?
Thank you. And for the Oxnard Authority, do we have a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Dr. Fussell. And I will go ahead and second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perrella,
Yes.
Chair Lopez,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Fuzzle.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
All right. Moving along, that brings us down to Director's Report. Mr. Freitas.
All right, let me run through some of the items we've got. There was a question of County Council at the last meeting of when two of the public members recused themselves from an item, should the alternate members step in and vote for them? County Council said specifically, no, that is not how that works. Alternate members will fill in for the public members if they're unable to attend the entire meeting. So that question was asked and answered by County Council, which I believe Supervisor Ramirez said was the case and reconfirmed her thoughts. Supervisors, as most of you I think know, Board of Supervisors did approve the private hangar lease at their May 24th meeting. Congrats to everybody who spent a lot of time over the last 7 years on that. Congratulations. Mr. Bear stole my thunder. Yes, we have the final paperwork for the vendor on the security cameras upgrades. That's in process to secure the purchase order, and we expect to work to begin the third or fourth quarter of this year.
Great news.
Noise items. Our top priority is getting our public information officer position in place. We expect to have announcements, announce the position this month with somebody in the seat in July. We're continuing with the flight tracking software system to help that position. And we're also looking for that to be installed through the fourth quarter of this year. And as you heard from Aaron, we've requested Part 150 noise compatibility studies for both airports. Going to the question about what are we doing at Oxnard to continue. And again, to be fair, you know, the acreage there at Oxnard is about 1/3 of what we have at Camarillo. But we have put out the 5 acres and 7 acres for new developments. We had multiple letters of interest, and we are currently now requesting additional information so we can go through a selection process for the final candidates on each of those parcels for improvements at Oxnard Airport. Do want to pass on that working with the fire district, they are bringing in their emergency Edson fire helicopter. That's a big Sikorsky helicopter to be staged here at the end of the month through the end of the year in preparation for the fire season. So it'll be at Camarillo Airport for basically 6-7 months. Do have some pictures. I think at the end of the slide, we've been talking about Cloud 9 happening. Well, I figured we actually ought to show you that things are happening. So they are pouring the foundation. We got 3-4 slides. If you can kind of trickle through those. Things are finally moving forward, and construction, they expect to open first or second quarter of 23. And the last item, we had been talking about, we had put the master plan for Camarillo on hold. I think you've heard me say a few times, we had gone back to the FAA to see if we could, I'll call that downgraded to an airport layout plan update. And we just received approval from the FAA to do that. I'm working with the city of Camarillo to go back to one of their July city council meetings to talk about that we got that approval, wrap up the master plan, and then talk about the ALP update, what that means. So at least publicly, we could kind of communicate. And the key to that is an ALP update assumes there will be no change to the current role of the airport, general aviation reliever, and will continue to operate consistent with the joint powers agreement. So we will we've got to close that. The public has heard about the master plan. It started, it was in the newspaper, all those things. We're going to kind of wrap that up. And we'll do the same with Oxnard, because Oxnard community was a part of that as well, in the bigger picture of the two airports. But wrap that up and then kind of talk about what the new process is, and hit the key points. We're not talking about any air cargo. We're not talking about commercial service. We're not talking about extending the runway. Again, consistent with the joint powers agreement that between the city and the county. And that's all I have to report to all of you. Thank you.
Looks like we have some questions. Supervisor Long, your hand was up first.
Yes, thank you. Director Freitas, appreciate you following up on the voting question in regards to the alternate. But I wanted to be clear because I guess tonight I didn't hear from them, that all members on this board can provide comment, whether you're in Camarillo or Oxnard, whether you're the alternate or the current member. Isn't that correct? I just want to make sure. Someone had commented to me about the fact that they were concerned the alternate member couldn't make a comment, and I think they can. And so I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, the clarity that County Council provided is, of course, they could as a member of the public. They just didn't want us to cloud the role of an alternate as opposed to the actual public member. So yes, as a member of the public, they could do that. They just didn't want us to, cloud what was their role. Were they on the committee or the authority at that time or not? So they just wanted to make sure it was distinct. But yes, of course, as a member of the public, they could make a comment.
I appreciate that. I just want to make sure all can make comments on this board. Thank you.
Mayor Moshe.
Mr. Freitas, just want to say thank you very much for the presentation. Wings over Camarillo, that's solidified and that's set for August 20th and 21st.
At this point, it is, and we have asked that members come and attend the July meeting to present to the Airport Commission and the airport authorities to make a little presentation about the upcoming event. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Mr. Bear. You're muted.
Thank you. Director Freitas, will the new PIO be involved in, I forget what you described, the truncated master plan. I forget the exact terminology.
ALP, Airport Layout Plan Update. 100% the new position would be driving those kinds of public events, but this one for sure.
And engage the community so that we can avoid the blowback that the master plan had last time?
That will be our #1 priority, to do a better job than we did last time.
Great, great. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, items 8 and 9 are reports only. So we'll move on to comments from the authority members, and hands are up. Supervisor Ramirez.
I wanted to speak quickly. I'm running out of battery. Don't have a long enough cord here. The comment earlier by a member of the public about leaded gas, I think is important. And I have looked at the study. It does raise some concerns, and I appreciated that we're going to be going electric. And I hope we're doing that as much as we can, even in our vehicles and everything else. But it's not here yet. And I'd like us to take a look at that and see what we can do to mitigate that, because we have a lot of schools near our Oxnard Airport, and young children are very susceptible to lead in water and air, and we had the whole thing about lead paint. So I'd like us to pay attention to that. Mr. Freitas, this hasn't officially come before the authority, but I know it's come elsewhere. People are sending me articles and talking to me about it, and I don't think we can ignore it. So I would appreciate at some point having some deeper discussion at the authority level. That's all. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mayor Malche.
I just have one request on reports, and that's on page 51, Ventura County noise complaints. There's a way to where we can add more contrast to the map because it's really hard to make out where exactly that is. I'm kind of looking at mountain ranges and trying to figure out, where those calls are coming from. So if we can add a little bit more contrast, it'll make it easier to read. That's all I got.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the end, unless we have any more comments. Okay, we will go ahead and adjourn. Our next meeting will be Thursday, July 14th at 6:30, location to be determined. Thanks, everybody. Great meeting.
Good night, all.
Thank you. Good night. Good meeting.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.